Okay. Right, you're welcome back. This is Newsfile, and it's a segment that I suppose that most of you have been waiting for. Bank of Africa strong as a group and close as a partner. They are proud sponsors. MTN, welcome to the new world. Sasso Spray, fresh and powerful. Star Assurance, creating smiles since 1985, celebrating 30 years of solid partnership. Lipton Tea, that's your #1 tea brand. Yum Vita is a delicious way to grow. And my guest, Abdul Malik Kwekubako, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. He's a regular panelist here. Ace Kojo Anand and Kuma, he is a lawyer. Right, thank you very much. He stopped me there. And then Kweku Kwating continues with us. He's a MP for Obuasi West and member of the Finance Committee of Parliament. And Felix Kwachi Ufosu is Deputy Minister of Communications. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning.
Great to have you. Now, on the issue of the judgment debt, you all know by now that the government issued the white paper on the judgment debt as the commission's work. That's the sole commissioner who investigated the judgment debt issues and came out with its report sometime in May this year, was it? And then just a day before the timeline of 6 months will elapse, the government brought us the white paper. I'm wondering what would have happened if that had not been possible. We're just a day away from the paper, the report becoming a useless piece of paper somehow. Right. A number of issues have come up in that report, and we are looking at just a few of them. We'll look at the Woyomi judgment and the findings that were made and the recommendations that the Attorney General, the white paper, is talking about. We'll look at also the call for blacklisting of certain entities and persons and their jobs in respect of what happened in the judgment debt. Government appears to have taken a swipe at the commissioner on some issues, suggesting that the commissioner dealt with certain things that are of doubtful constitutional, underpinnings. Also, we'll look at the issue of the Delta Foods, in which Nana Akufo-Addo features as the Attorney General, in which there was a loss, financial loss of $4.9 million. There was also the SG versus the GMPC matter, which the drillship was sold for $24 million, and we are told of some payment and a balance that cannot be accounted for somewhat, and Katie Hammond is being asked to be investigated further by the IOCO. Also in that matter, there was some financial loss that was caused. Some of the recommendations accepted, some rejected, some varied. To what end? And my own reading of the report together with the white paper suggests to me that there's been a lot of some amount of the stupidity of the political leadership, or they are colluding with the contractors for some private gain, including to raise campaign finance corruptly. And I define stupidity simply as a behavior that shows a lack of good sense of judgment. I don't know how else to explain the actions of especially politicians, as though there are no laws leading to these contracts, some very funny and unconscionable, and interests that rise through the roofs and the Judgment Debt Commissioner cannot understand. There's also the sheer lackadaisical lawyering at the AG's department, or incompetence or collusion for private gain corruptly. How else does one explain the no-shows leading to the default judgments, mostly in these cases, or the lousy approaches to dealing with these cases? Now, your preliminary views of what the white paper had to say about the Commission's work. Felix.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. Well, essentially, the report of the sole commissioner, who inquired into the payment of judgment debts and other such payments, was widely expected. Government indicated clearly at the time that the report was presented that it was going to study it and make its position known clearly on the matter via the constitutionally required white paper. And that is precisely what happened last Wednesday. The white paper, as the Attorney General pointed out, essentially recalled the mandates of the sole commissioner and showed clearly how the report was prepared, and on that basis proceeded to state government's position. The issues were categorized into three. Basically, there were recommendations that government accepted wholly. There were recommendations that government rejected. There were others too that you could say government accepted in part, or if you like, modified, because it disagreed with certain pronouncements that were made. Obviously, the cases that dominated, even in the selection of cases, the sole commissioner tended to focus on those ones that were in the public domain and controversial.
Its mandate was to investigate inordinate payments.
Absolutely.
So these were the inordinate judgment.
Absolutely, absolutely. But even in presenting them, in terms of which took precedence, it was obvious that he was focusing on those ones that were controversial. And why not? There was intense public interest, so it had to be that way. One could hardly disagree with the sole commissioner's choice. Regarding the Woyome Waterville isophoton, and to some extent the Discoverer 511, if you like, the Societe Generale versus GMPC. The sole commissioner, essentially, if you read the report in totality, said that the processes that had been commenced, and in all of these cases, there have been judicial pronouncements which have clearly directed what actions should be taken. The sole commissioner essentially deferred to the Supreme Court that had pronounced in these matters and asked the Attorney General to follow upon what the Supreme Court had said. We know where Woyome is at, we know where Waterville is at, we know where isophoton is at. And so the government accepted that indeed these are steps that were already underway, and so it was going to follow through with them. With regards to the drillship or Discoverer, or even like Societe Generale versus GMPC, government also accepted that. The sole commissioner recommended that two things should happen. That we should look into the conduct of officials at the Attorney General's Department, the Finance Ministry, and other places regarding how the proceeds from the sale of the ship were disbursed. Secondly, the sole commissioner recommended that Mr. K.T. Amon, who was central to the sale of that ship, should further be engaged by IOCO to ascertain the use to which part of the $3.5 million, which was the outstanding amount after the amount owed Societe Generale had been paid, was disbursed. And I believe this would help us ascertain fully exactly what happened to that amount. There were also issues that the sole commissioner raised about the conduct of the Attorney General at the time. For instance, he pointed out that at a time when Societe Generale itself, or should we... His choice to deal, how he deals with the preliminary. Yeah, I think that because of time, when you that's fine. You can raise disagreements in detail, I'm sure in specifics. Yeah, the sole commissioner took the view that the Attorney General was rather lax in his approach to defending the state's interest in that matter. Because at the time when Societe Generale itself had made an offer of $40 million as an amount that it was willing to take, and the Energy Minister, Mr. Kandapa, had indeed confirmed that such an offer was on the table. They were actually engaged in negotiation when in June, thereabouts, default judgment was entered in the London court because the Attorney General failed to offer any form of representation for the state. Again, by failing to represent the state, we were essentially gifting Societe Generale $47 million because that was the claim that they had brought against us. GMPC had also made its own counterclaims. So at the very least, we had a duty as a state to defend our interest. If we lost in the end, we could not be blamed for having made or failing to make an effort in terms of defending our interest. But no such effort was put up after Bindman and partners were dismissed from that particular brief. So the sole commissioner criticized the conduct of the Attorney General's Department and said that that conduct led to us incurring a cost, because at the very least, or at most, incurring a loss. A loss, yes, at most, we would have paid $40 million. Assuming that we were not even inclined to negotiate and that we took the offer.
Again, I know that I'm beginning to appreciate what Kweku just pointed out.
I'll leave it at that and come back. Right. With regards to Delta Foods, I think there's been some misinformation. If you read both the reports and the white paper, there's no indictment on Nana Akufo-Addo. And indeed, I have gone through the report extensively. I also read the white paper. There's nowhere that the report indicts Nanado. Government does not indict Nanado. What the sole commissioner said in his report was that he is of the view that it was that decision by the Aegis department. In any event, that decision was taken in 1998 or so, when the MPP had not come to power. So you could not afford Nanado. But the Aegis department decided at a later date, after it had agreed a settlement with Delta Foods, to go and raise an order for certiorari. I hope I got the pronunciation right. And it is the belief of the sole commissioner that that certiorari delayed the payment unnecessarily, leading to the accrual of interest and loss in exchange rates, which then compelled Delta Foods to come and make further demands of $4.9 million. And Akufo-Addo only advised the payment of that amount. He was of the view that that payment constituted a financial loss, but it was not a loss that arose out of the actions of the then Attorney General, because he was basically presented with a fait accompli. There was nothing that he could do about it. But in the reportage, it has been made to seem that government, or if you like, the sole commissioner had indicted another, and government was refusing. Okay. As it were to go after him.
I believe, I believe we can deal with the specifics
okay.
right away. But this is what the general observations were, as the white paper captures again. In summary, that poor record keeping. These are the things that have led us to all of the judgment debts and the wrongful payments. Judgment debt payments between 2009 and 2012. The decision in 2009 to liquidate most of the judgment debt hanging around the neck of the state as a result of neglect by previous government to save the economy from collapse. The inability of the Attorney General to properly defend the state in court in majority of the cases in which the state was sued for acts and omissions of public institutions, and D, findings and observations peculiar to land compensation payments. So it tabulates these as the major headings under which we will find why judgment debts had become a problem and albatross.
Thanks, Samson. When Justice Yaopel was appointed, you can imagine that everybody was carrying out for information. Who is he? Where is he coming from? And of course, political spins were being thrown about his appointment. I came out clearly to say that judges don't come any better than Justice Appel. I said clearly, look, Justice Appel is pure gold. Intellectually, you may disagree with him, but you will not doubt the effort that goes into it. Justice Appel tends to be someone who is engaged, and sometimes his engagement may be misinterpreted as him being emotional or being too verbose on matters. But he wears his heart on his sleeve. And if you appear before him as a judge, if he disagrees with you, he'll tell you frontally. That look, I disagree with you. So he doesn't, mince his words. And so I can imagine that at some point I know at some point in the proceedings, people were a bit worried about how frontal he was being. But that's just him. But as a consummate jurist, you can't fault him. He makes, and I'll talk about the overall thing. You will agree with him on certain things, and you will disagree with him on others, which is just normal, which is just human. But one of his recommendations, I think, is something that Ghanaians need to look at. Not in so many ways. He's asking us to get rid of the coup mentality that we still have. That whenever there's a change of government, we treat the people who have lost elections as if they have just been ousted from a coup. And the only way that politicians know how to deal with each other under these circumstances is to torment and harass each other with accusations and allegations, and things are thrown into the press, and we have seen it repeatedly. Ghana is probably one of the few African countries that have seen a peaceful change of power from one party to the other. And whenever that happens, somehow the victors grasp this mentality and begin to go after the others. And what has happened is that the losing parties simply shut up. The last time, they refused to appear at the transition meetings. And so vital and key information that the new government should have received never went to them. And surprisingly, we do not have law that compels them to do handing over notes. I don't know whether, we've been talking about a transition bill, which now might deal with these situations. So basically what happened is that critical information that government should have received, the government did not receive. And so people who could smell that we were ready and available to be hit for 6, then will go to the new government, tell tall tales, and simply make money that they do not deserve. And Justice Appel speaks to us and says, we should stop this.
The Wyoming case, classic example.
Classic example. And many other cases, some of which I can't speak about directly because I'm conflicted. But you will see that it is simply the coup mentality. And so we have lost money in Ghana. We have lost money outside Ghana simply because every new government seeks to remove what people have done, even those that are legal and binding. And to that extent, I say that, look, Justice Appel is spot on. That has been my experience. And I think that he needs to be commended. We may disagree with certain aspects of his work, but for me, looking at it, I haven't seen the actual report, actually. I've seen the white paper and its quotations. I think that from what I've read, 2 thumbs up, way up.
Right. We'll deal with the recommendations in there, including setting up an ADR desk and several other things, including some sort of what appears to be some instruction to the Chief Justice to get the judges to seek to monitor certain things. A bit odd, but let's see how that works. Now, Koku, taking the white paper on the whole, what do you say?
Well, I have to be very honest with you. It was only yesterday that last night, that I was able to get a copy of the white paper in terms of its full text. And I began to read it this morning. Otherwise, what I'd been doing was scanning the media and getting the way they've highlighted some portions. So I do not have the benefit of the full knowledge of all the details. But of course, I looked at some critical areas because those have been highlighted by the media. In principle, I had always been for this particular project. I gave it public support, and I thought it was a useful exercise. In terms of its proceedings, it was also largely very fair and okay, except there were some low points. I had occasion to criticize particular proceedings, the one that Mr. Chikata appeared. I thought it was treated with kid gloves, and I said so publicly, and I still stand by that. And I'm not surprised at all that in terms of the report itself and the white paper, I'm vindicated in that opinion. When we come to deal with the specifics, I will deal with it.
Interesting.
Now, and the government white paper too, there are areas that are suspect in how they drafted or crafted those particular portions. And if you realize that provided some ammunition, propaganda ammunition, for some sections of the media to run with and targeting Akufo-Addo. That is because that problem occurred within the white paper itself.
Okay, we'll deal with that. Koku, what do you say about this part of the white paper, for example, at page 105? It says that government directs the institutions to study the advice given by the Commission and take steps to ensure that the cases are dealt with in such manner as not to develop into judgment debt or to exacerbate the judgment debt if they have already accrued. And it's talking about judgment debts, cases that smell of judgment debt, of about 536 of them pending as we speak. The Lands Commission alone has 412 of such cases. So the AG, for example, is giving them within 6 months to give the Attorney General's Department feedback on what exactly it is doing on these cases to avoid the situation where we have judgment debt and the interest that accrues, over the period.
Thank you, Samson. But let me quickly comment on what Ace said before I answer your question. Yes, I also agree in many respects with Justice Appel on the point that politicians get power and we are the bosses and we think we can do anything. That could result in situations such as we have had. But I think we should also remember the background to those who saw commissions work. When several issues came up, and in many of them, it became evident that not that subsequent governments or even the administrations then really misconducted themselves. It is because people in government connived with private players to dupe the nation. It is very clear. And I think it was the worry of Ghanaians that judgment that was becoming a new kickback for people in government. That put pressure on government to set up this commission. It's important that we keep that also in mind. If you look at the fact that many of the cases still pending may not necessarily be that political, I still think once people look at judgment dead and as an opportunity to make legitimate money, yes, that advice is very useful. And the president and government must pay close attention to these issues themselves. It is not sufficient to just give advice, because if people can benefit illegitimately, why would people not do it? And so government itself must realize that this judgment dead area has become a very an area for corruption, and therefore there ought to be a more sensitive interest in those matters than just advising that, AG, let's see if these cases could be disposed of quickly so we don't incur more debt. That would have been fine if things were normal and we probably were just delaying. But on the report itself, together with the white paper, I have also not read the report, but the white paper makes references to many parts of the report. I see, and as we discuss the details, I see an attempt by both the report, to the extent that I have read it, and the government white paper, to let it look like all the problems and the worries of the public about the Woyome judgments and all those are Sofoton, and especially those ones that people went to court and secured for the nation, judgment that is not really a problem for us. Look, it's been there for ages, and even look at drillship. I see that in the report very clearly, and when we go into the details, you would see why the recommendations by the sole commissioner in very similar cases are very different. And it's hard for me not to draw the conclusion that there is an attempt to use the sole commissioner's work and a conspiracy with government to create an impression that we are not as bad as people thought in respect of these judgment dead matters, and that our political opponents also did same. I see that, and I'll point to the detail that gives me this impression.
Okay, I'll start with you still. When you look at the GMPC matter, for example, Societe Generale versus the GMPC, in which we had to sell the drill ship, there obviously has been a declaration of financial loss as a result of the Attorney General then's inability or failure to go to the London court to defend the state. And at a time when we were seeking to sort of get into an arbitration or settle the case with Societe Generale, the report says we did not inform the London court. And by failing to inform the London court, we had arrived at a 14 million judgment debt to pay as final settlement. Yet the Societe Generale went to court on our blind side and took judgment for 47 million. And then eventually we had to come and negotiate to pay, is it 19 million, is it? So clear case of how we don't look for the state's interest.
That is how it appears in this case. But we probably should want to listen to the Attorney General at the time. Does it feature in all this? These conclusions, to say that the Attorney General refused to defend the state when he should have.
In fact, that the GMPC had put a strong defense for us.
Sure.
And he didn't go to take care of it.
And what's the response of the Attorney General? The sole commissioner did not bother at all to get an explanation from the Attorney General, because I don't believe that the facts that have been presented by the commissioner are accurate. I would have loved to hear, I mean, especially the conclusions. I would have loved to hear from the Attorney General at the time, and that is Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to whom references were made. I would have loved to hear his side. the commissioner did not bother to find out why this was so, and only jumped to the conclusion that there were some financial losses. And if you look at the report, it says he has to be made to refund the money or something. It deepens the impression. And if you ask me, I want to hear the full story. I think the commissioner acted wrongly in just taking perhaps one side of the story and putting a report out that creates a certain impression of one of the best politicians we have in the country right now. And then I'm being asked to pass judgment on that. I want to hear the other side. And you would compare that with other areas. For instance, the New World Investment versus the GMPA. And I ask, why is it that in some instances, both the report and government took a very light view of the losses that had happened, even in the Woyome case? If I could quickly read that part.
Which part? Which case?
The Woyome.
I want us to deal with these specifics briefly. We'll finish with one, we'll deal with the other.
I was just juxtaposing that with the Woyome to indicate how the same financial loss attracts different conclusions by the sole commissioner, and in many cases, you say government agrees with the recommendations. So if you ask whether there was a real financial loss, I don't know. I wasn't there, and because we have not been given all the sides, it's difficult to conclude that these conclusions were really legitimate.
This is what the white paper says on the GMPC matter. He says, in the light of the established facts and the findings and observations made by the Commission, government accepts the following recommendations of the Commission. 1. The Minister of Finance and officials of the Comptroller and Accountant General's Department at the Ghana High Commission in London at the time in question, that is between 2001 and 2006, should be made to A. Render proper accounts on how the USD 3.5 million that was lodged in the London bank was disbursed since the money belonged to the GMPC. 2. Explain what happened to the 141,000 and so US dollars that was transferred into the second account that was also opened at the Ghana International Bank, London. Explain what happened to the balance of 1 million, almost 2 million, that was left in the first account that was opened at the Ghana International Bank, London. Explain how the law firm, which assisted in the sale negotiations, Constant, disbursed the $900,000 that was paid into an escrow account in London, supposed to cater for the future debts of GMPC to other creditors. And finally, the executive arm of government should be slow in interfering in the running of state institutions that have independent legal capacities. Such interferences do not augur well for good governance and disable the state from holding institutions accountable for their stewardship. Right after that, then it went to direct the IOCO to undertake the assignment in the first respect, that is to establish the proper, tracing of the accounts and how the monies were spent, and also to investigate the mandate and authority or basis of the Honorable K.T. Hammond's disbursement of the $900,000. Okay, so no, I'm coming to Felix now. These are the recommendations as far as the white paper is concerned that ought to be done. I'm sure you have heard KT so far and others suggest that these are necessary things because the answers are right there.
Well, it is fairly straightforward. You simply show up at Yoko and provide these answers backed with relevant proof and documentation. I don't think that we can lose any sleep over this small process. But let me respond swiftly to claims by Kweku, obviously a friend of Nanado, and Kweku Kwating, a member of the MPP. You see, there's an attempt to create sacred cows in this judgment discussion. You see, no honest broker who follows the GMPC, the Societe Generale case, would absorb Nanado of blame on this matter. And it is not witch hunting. Look, the totality of the issues can be summarized this way. At some point, Societe Generale, which had engaged in some hedging transaction on behalf of GMPC, sued GMPC for what it claimed were debts owed it. GMPC also went in there and at some point filed counterclaims. So there was a contestation in court. We were represented by a legal firm called Bindman and Partners. They were defending our interest. The matter was going on when there was a changeover in government. At some point, and this was confirmed by Mr. Kandapa. Mr. Kandapa was a member of the cabinet. He was energy minister. He had supervisory jurisdiction over the activities of GMPC. He said that in the course of the contestation in court in London, Societe Generale made an offer of $14 million as an amount that they were willing to take. An impression is created that the sole commissioner relied on Chachuchi Kata for that 14 million, or that the 14 million was conjured from the sky. This was the testimony of Mr. Kandapa. Now, when somebody comes to you and says that I wish to settle for an amount of $40 million, even as the court case is going ahead, and as Attorney General, you dismiss legal representation. No, you see, again, there have been claims that it was a political decision taken by cabinet. Why? It would be a horrendous political decision if that was the case. The Attorney General is the chief legal advisor to government. I cannot fathom a situation where government would take such a decision without recourse to him. If indeed that happened, then it was an extremely dysfunctional cabinet. So I would like those who are claiming that it was a cabinet decision to show me Nanado's memo to cabinet advising against that step, or better still, his endorsement of the decision. As far as I know, it was his duty because he withdrew the services of Bindman and Partners. Once you did that, like I said before, you had gifted Societe Generale $47 million because there was no defense. At the same time that you were negotiating, again, there was no settlement of $40 million. The $40 million was not agreed to. It was under negotiation. But at all times that the negotiation was going on, it was incumbent on the Attorney General's department to defend our interest until such point that the case was determined. It was his duty to draw the attention of the court that there was such a negotiation going on behind the scenes. The failure to do that led to default judgment. Once Societe Generale had default judgment of $47 million, there was no way they were going to come back to talk to you about $40 million. And in Kandapa's own words, they told them that the $40 million was off once they had the default judgment. So we put Societe Generale in a position of strength because of our failure to go and defend our interests. Is it a fact that the Attorney General withdrew the service of Bindman and Partners or not? Is it a fact that subsequent to their withdrawal, there was no further legal representation by the government of Ghana? Is it a fact that after that, there was default judgment? And after the default judgment, is it a fact that the $40 million initially proposed was off the table? These are the facts.
Okay.
And you need to go into the reasons.
No, you see, again, listen, I have challenged you.
We have been here before. I'm going to go back.
Let me land.
And he will repeat and show these documents over and again.
Let me land, okay? Mr. Kandapa and Katie Yamot were members of the Kufuor administration. I would be shocked if they were unaware of the reasons why the Attorney General said that we should discontinue with our defense of the case in London. Mr. Kandapa sat in the cabinet. I would assume that the so-called cabinet session. Listen. Again, you see something. Mr. Woyome was never invited to the Sole Commission. Madam Betty Modidusu never went to the Sole Commission. Mr. Basimudro never went to the Sole Commission.
That's why they've all been vindicated in the report.
Vindicated how? The Sole Commission has simply said that there are legal processes underway already regarding the matters that their names have been mentioned in. So we should simply respect the position of the Supreme Court. In any event, what was the cardinal standpoint of the Supreme Court in all three cases? Woyome, Waterville, Isofutun. It was a violation of Article 1815. It was the violation of Article 1815. Check under which administration that violation occurred. So in terms of what role was played by who, they have been subject to legal processes.
Okay.
So let nobody attempt to extricate Nanado from blame when it is glaring. So let them show us the cabinet decision, Nanado's position on the matter, and then we can move forward. Otherwise, let them stop saying that.
Like I said, we have been here before, but that was before the white paper.
So why couldn't Kandapa?
Okay, hold on. Let's hear your take on the SG.
You know, Nanado is obviously a huge target out there relative to this drillship matter. So I've been asking myself, why then wasn't he invited? Why wasn't he? Because it appears it's a big deal here. So why wasn't the Attorney General, who expressed his readiness, if you recall, he was then in the UK, to appear before the commission to testify? And this very critical question being asked, and indeed my good friend Randy Abbey posed the same question to me Thursday on Metro TV. It was a legitimate question. So that question ought to have been interrogated as part of the proceedings of the commission in order for us to have thrown light on it, and we will not be sitting here wandering in the realm of speculation and conjecture.
The people you worked with were there.
My goodness.
Kandapar was there, Katie Hammond was there.
And Kandapar's so-called testimony of the 14 million, which was just a subject of negotiation, is not even captured here in this report. It's not here. The commissioner did not see it as weighty enough to put any value on it. He rather puts value on Katie Hammond's testimony, where you see Katie Hammond talking about between 14 million and 20 million. Okay? Now the commissioner himself here says that almost reached an agreement, almost agreed on agreement. The white paper says final settlement. There's an obvious contradiction. Almost reached, almost agreed. It's not a final settlement. But the white paper has proceeded beyond the almost reached and almost agreed and said final settlement. Somebody is trying very, very hard and very desperately to target some Akufo-Addo. You see, I have supported this project, and I also believe, and H has said, that Justice Apao has integrity. I know him, I believe in him, but I have a difficulty with some specific areas, and I do not want to be tempted to say that relative to the drillship, it was a political hatchet job. I do not want to be tempted in saying that.
Said that.
No. No. I am resisting. It's true. This is right. I am resisting the temptation to describe this as those aspects of this thing as constituting political hatchet job. I'm sorry, but it is difficult. See, now ask yourself this. Here we are. We owed, and forget about the so-called default judgment. We actually indeed owed SG $40 million as at December 15, 1998. And it is documented here by Chachu Chikata himself in a memo to the board of GMPC. And I have all the minutes of the GMPC boards here where he agreed and in fact defended the transaction as well as the 40 million, defended it, that we indeed owed. So let's see. Here's a situation where you owed 40 million by 1998 December. Because we were haggling with them both out of court and in court, the interest was building up. The 7 million that came on, interest and other costs and things, that brought it about by 2001. See, somebody comes to office within 6 months, proceeds to negotiate all deals while the case is still in court. 40 million. Let's forget the 7 million. Almost reached 14 million. Almost agreed 14 million. Somebody makes a deduction that, oh, because you didn't go to court and because the people got 47 and that at the end of the day you paid 19.5 instead of the almost reached 14, you have caused financial loss to the state. During Mr. Chikate's appearance, there was not an occasion that the commissioner interrogated the issue of the 40 million. Even in this report, there is a casual statement of it. Oh, this is how we arrived by the 47. The commission did not appear interested in whether indeed there was a $40 million liability or not. And if there was, how did we arrive there? The commissioner appears in his report and the white paper all appear to be interested in the almost reached 14, the almost agreed 14, and then do their deduction 14 minus from the 19 and say there's financial loss. What happened to the 40 that we indeed owed? That all official record shows that we owed. So the people who negotiated and came to the almost 14, they negotiated from 40. And came to the almost 14 and almost reached 14, they did no service for this country. 14 minus 40, if you take 14 out of 26, did I hear that? No service to the nation. But somebody deliberately was seeking to target one particular personality, and that is why that personality should have been offered an opportunity to be challenged with this almost absurd finding. I'm sorry.
What do you say then? What do you say then when there is a recommendation suggesting that some action should be taken, and the white paper says no, you can't take any action?
Before I do that, no, that you're shifting. You are shifting to Delta. You see, let's not confuse the issue.
No, but I'm saying, if this is a target you are looking for,
I am coming to.
If this is government's target, then why didn't they endorse the sanction that was seeking against Nanado?
Dubious validity, and I'll prove it right here. You wait, but let me finish this one. See, strong defense. Where is the evidence? Mr. Chikata went there and said so. He said so in 2001. He says, we provided strong defense and a counterclaim. The commission, did they see the counterclaim? Did they see the strong defense? Where is it? The strong defense that had been put before the court as far back as 1999. The counterclaim that had been placed before the court. The so-called negligent advice that SG gave. Did they have copies? Did they interrogate those things?
They rely on Mr. Chikata, who is a reliable witness as far as they are concerned.
Oh, because he said so. That's enough for a commission of records. A commission of... No, please.
Managing director of GMPC gave testimony.
And he said he didn't even know that there was a default judgment. He hadn't even seen it before.
Because
you remember I published it and it was supposed to be a forgery. I published it and people said it was a forgery.
You did.
Okay? So please, let's be straightforward here. Commission of records must deal with records. Must interrogate records.
Is it not fair for the commissioner to say, for Nanado's failure or inability or neglect to go to the London court to indicate to the court that we are in negotiations with Societe Generale, and like Koku said, we have almost reached, 14 million as the full and final settlement of the debt.
You actually,
and not.
You said almost agreed to.
Yes, yes.
Ah, okay. I thought it was me.
Failure to do so, and allowing, in that regard, for Societe Generale to go to that court and to take the 47, million, is that not a certain neglect or dereliction of duty that the commissioner fairly has commented on?
Something. Let me make some disclosures. You know that often when you invite me here, I don't come.
Yes, I do.
90% of the invitations I turn down. And often my point to you is that I'm conflicted.
Yes.
By some accident of history, I happen to have done quite a lot of these cases involving Ghana government. And when I hear Felix speak, I say, Felix speaks the way I speak now, based on my deep knowledge of the workings of Ghana and its legal teams in various litigation matters. Why didn't they show up? Why didn't they do this and the other? But then, as just when I'm about to fall in love with Felix, reality hits me again. He's in government. And guess what? They're doing the same thing. And so sitting here in the role that I haven't taken for myself, but most people have assumed that I'm a neutral, I wonder, did we go, did we come? Because it's very good to point the finger at Nanado and everybody. But guess what? It is still going on. But just that I can't speak about it because the ethics of our profession stops me from speaking about it. There are days I sit down and when I hear the politicians hit their heads together, I wish I didn't do the job I did. So I can come up and issue a press statement and say, people of Ghana, hear this. Our politicians are messing us up. Now let's deal with issues like the state of our legal defense. And
when you are talking about these things, when you talk about, for example, the bank switch issue, the state defaulted uncountable times. When you read the report, I don't remember so many times. No, I'm not saying so many times. They were supposed to be in court. They won't come.
I've been blamed for bank switch.
Yes, the panel will give them the opportunity. Will adjourn. At the point they just got tired. They just got fed up.
Yes. Okay. As Phyllis says, something's being unfair. That's why I don't like coming here. But let me speak to this. Before this government and in previous governments, I have seen it happen. As for our lawyers abandoning us midstream, it happens routinely. People of Ghana, when those matters start, our governments go for some of the best firms in London. often with no local firms. I mean, they don't believe us. They go for some of the best firms in the city of London with the big names. In one instance, the first bill from the law firm to Ghana was £250,000 for the 1 month of work. Of course, we couldn't pay. If you go for a City of London firm, you are paying a partner £500 an hour, £1,000 an hour to work for you. The first bill that hit the Ghana government was £250,000. We could not pay, so they ditched us. And we went through the rest of the matter almost without legal representation, and at some point we had to settle and buy the claim out. And I've seen instances where in the midstream, the government's legal representation has just disappeared. They don't explain why. They simply say we are not representing government of Ghana anymore. And government of Ghana does not appoint another lawyer and continue to default until judgment is given against us. Now, but I've also seen cases where the government has come in and has fought and has, even though they have lost, and then proclaimed to Ghanaians that they had won. What they actually did was to shave off quite a good bit of the claim. But still, we lost and have to pay. But this is Ghana. You see the voodoo arithmetic that is going on here. One says it was 40. We managed to reduce it to 19. Another says they almost took 14, but it went to 19. You have caused loss. Say, give me credit. That's what happens. You've lost. But you say, because the people didn't get all they wanted, I have won. Yet you have to pay. So is it a fair comment by the commissioner? It's a fair comment by the commissioner, but I'll come to deal with the commissioner later, because I said I admire his work, but I will start dealing with why I disagree with him. And so in instances like this, one would expect that when the commissioner makes such findings, he would have availed himself of all the available evidence. Because if the commissioner, for example, in the case I have read quite a bit of, the Woime matter, indicts, okay, he couldn't have called the judge. But a fair bit of what the government will produce from the commissioner's report is indicting the judge. Right. A little bit indicts Nekwitete. A little bit then says the substantive attorney general was just ignorant. And so if you look at case number 1 in the white paper, the government tells us that according to the commissioner, what happened in the Woime matter was either through inadvertence or pure mischief, through connivance. Then the commissioner fingers Nekwitete that it must have been connivance because his wife appeared to have benefited from the transaction. 400,000 cedis appeared. In fact, the commissioner's words, her account was ballooned by that amount. Suddenly. Then when he gets to the attorney general, in the service. Yes. At the attorney general. Yes, actually, at some point, he was almost de facto the Solicitor General until he was transferred, Chief State Attorney. Then when it comes to the then Attorney General, it's curious. This white paper suggests that the commissioner says that her role falls into inadvertence. So there were 2 divisions, either mischief or inadvertence. Now, mischief, Nekwitete. Attorney General, inadvertence. It's nice, listen to it. The then Attorney General, in deciding to negotiate with Alfred Agbesi Woyeme for the payment of the CD equivalent of €22 million plus, to him as representing 2% of the alleged financial engineering cost, was ignorant about the facts of the case Woyeme had pleaded in court, but nevertheless went ahead to negotiate and finally ordered for such payment to be made without any scrutiny of his claim and due diligence. Wait a second. How can you say the person was ignorant and also say that the person failed to do a scrutiny of the claim and failed to do due diligence? In other words, in one instance, we are being told that failure to do due diligence, failure to scrutinize is ignorance. In another instance, the same alleged failures amount to culpability. Then a substantial portion, almost 90% of the portion that is quoted in the report is directed at the judge in the court. Whoa. So I say, there's something wrong with this picture. Okay, now I'm being told that Mrs. Modijusu was not invited. Whoa, why? Now I'm being told that, for example, that it is obvious, Nekwitete was not invited. Why?
And yet he's indicted.
And yet he's indicted. Yeah. So these are the areas where I would have some disagreement with Justice Appel. But as I said, I've given him my full endorsement. But I'm saying that he even gives you enough to disagree with him. Because, yes, that's just Appel. He'll give you enough to support him. He will give you enough to disagree with him. Right? But now let's get into, I don't know if it's time for me to deal with this Woyeme case again. Because to me, if the sole commissioner does not invite somebody, It is a statement that he thinks he has enough. Yeah. So then a burden is placed on him in his report and on the government in this white paper to say that every fact that the sole commissioner should have known, he is deemed to know. Yeah. And that if any fact comes up that appears the sole commissioner did not know, it then drives needles through the balloon of his report. And this is one clear instance. Of course, he couldn't have invited the trial judge, but why wasn't equated? He's still in the service. Why is the then honorable
I think he was transferred somewhere to the upper region.
Yes, I see that's punishment for this, right? If you want to punish somebody, you send it to the upper region. Now, Mr. Batnodro and Felix is telling us, he also wasn't invited. But these were principal actors, and their roles have been known. They have admitted their roles. All the documents are in the public domain. So today we are entitled to interrogate these matters. And if I have a little,
you say they have admitted their roles, but some of them, when you speak to them privately, and I have had the opportunity of doing so, even though I'm unable to disclose what they say.
You're also conflicted.
you see, they tell you about some of the things in here that are incorrect, inaccuracies.
Absolutely, because somehow then it means that either the sole commissioner did not avail himself of all the information, but he's presumed to know. Because once he didn't call them, he thought he had enough. So if there's new evidence or there's a pre-existing evidence that shows that some of these conclusions are inaccurate, then the sole commissioner's work then begins to crumble. And that is where I express some disagreement. I know if you want to make it around, but we're dealing with Woyeme. Now, let's deal with this alleged ignorance and listen to the words. In deciding to negotiate with Alfred Agbesu Woyeme for the payment of the money, she was ignorant about the facts of the case Woyeme had pleaded in court, unquote. Was ignorant about the facts of the case Woyeme had pleaded in court. Really? Woyeme sued. When he sued, he didn't, with due respect, go around Accra broadcasting his suit. He served a copy of his writ of summons and statement of claim and 2 subsequent amendments on the state. The state entered appearance. A lawyer was appointed, Nekwe Tete.
Yes.
Then a chief state attorney. The same Nekwe Tete, who as a principal state of attorney was a witness to the Waterville agreement. That is what people, that's the sole commissioner know that the same gentleman was the witness to the Waterville agreement. And as a lawyer, principal state attorney at the time, would have known that there was no agreement with Woyeme. The agreement was with Waterville. Right? He is appointed to be the lawyer for the state in this matter. And the attorney general was ignorant of it. Who assigned the case to Nekwe Tete? Not the attorney general.
Sure.
If documents are served on the attorney general's office, the attorney general, who is the principal advisor to government, the person who defends the state in his or her name, is ignorant of the facts pleaded. He pleaded facts in court. It was in a statement of claim. The statement of claim and the writ of summons were served on the attorney general's department, and we are told maybe it's the way the government has captured this, that she was ignorant about it. Somebody watch this. This attempt to create a victim of the then Honorable Attorney General didn't just start with this. It started with she herself. When she claims that after the judgment and after instructing the payment of the money after judgment, she discovered Kwekwa Jumamenu's letter.
Right.
Harks us right back to what Justice Apa was saying. Why wasn't this letter on some file? Or was this letter on some file? Did Mr. Jumamenu take this letter home with him? We don't know. Why is it that it was only after we had admitted to the debt and not shown up in court that this letter appears? Then when we ran to court, the word chosen by the Attorney General to disguise the embarrassment or the shame was mistaken belief. Really? Now, you are deemed to have knowledge of documents you have and documents that you are deemed to have. At the very least, you have constructive notice of the... before we get to Kwame Tete. No, but I see something wants to say. But I need quite some time to do it. I don't think we have the time. But when we go into this, to be fair, I mean, that's the only reason you invited me here. Let me say I've contributed to that just to add to it. Listen, when we go back, this is what the sole commissioner is saying. She was negligent. She was ignorant about the pleadings in court. But she was not ignorant about the claim. When she got into office, Waterville was the first to show up with a claim for money. The same Waterville whose contract had been terminated who had accepted the termination and had accepted payment,
yes,
and whose subcontractors had been paid.
Yes.
And by the terms of a November agreement between Waterville and Woyome, admitted that those subcontractors paid Woyome, as a result of which they, Waterville and Woyome, entered into an MOU to terminate his services to them. Yeah. The same Waterville then appears before the then Attorney General and makes a fantastic claim for more money. Woyome somehow, by some mystery, hears about this. He writes to the Attorney General, says, in fact, you don't owe them how much they are asking for. You owe them 5 million euro. You owe me 6 million euro. Then Waterville's lawyer, the Venerable Kwabetete, wrote to the Attorney General to say, you know what, you don't owe Woyome a dime. Within weeks, Mr. Tete's services are terminated for Waterville. Now Waterville and Woyome have the same lawyer. And if you look at the subsequent agreement between Waterville and Woyome, they are saying that once they were paid, they sat down and decided to act together to make claims against the government. Was the sole commissioner shown these documents? Where they concede that we decided to work together to make claims against the government, and then entered into an agreement on how they were going to share the booty. Now these things were made to the Attorney General. So she knew about the dispute. Suddenly the people who were disputing were friends. Mm-hmm. They now ignorant. Where was the agreement with Woyome? He said publicly there was no contract with the government. But he went to court to say that he had an agreement for the payment of 2%. So that's contradictory. You are served with these documents and you are ignorant? Really? Which kind of ignorance is it? Something, let's deal with this. So she served with the documents. Now, what happens to Waterville's claim? They decided to go for mediation. Mm-hmm. Mediation? Now, wait a second. Mediation means you and I have a dispute, we go before Felix.
Right.
Felix doesn't impose a judgment on us. It is not an arbitration. Arbitration, that's an award. In mediation, we agree what to pay. So when we went to the mediation where the mediator was Mr. Kwauno, we then agreed to pay them 25 million euro, more than the total that Woyome had talked about. Yeah. Right? We agreed to pay them. Now, so that's why I said when I listen to Felix, I'm just about to fall in love with him. Then I remember these facts, and then my love disappears. But then they went to mediation and agreed to pay. Now, this is the dangerous part of it. A mediation agreement, although it's not an arbitration, has the effect of an arbitration award.
Yes.
So if you don't challenge it within 3 months, it becomes final, valid, and binding.
Right.
And so we went to mediation, and mediation processes are in camera. So what documents did they provide? What defense did the Attorney General put up? How did they arrive at the 25 million euro? Nobody knows. And this is agreed upon. It is the mediation award. How much was the mediator paid? And was the mediator paid from the 25 million euro, or was he paid outside that?
No, I'm told it was paid from within.
How much was it? We don't know.
Some 2 million,
so
about 2 million
euro. Did the commissioner know this when he said she was ignorant?
You're raising quite very critical
about 2
issues
million
that
euro.
go to the history of the case itself.
So she knew the history.
Now,
very important.
Now, since you have just brought in that aspect, let's clear the aspect of the Woyome matter. But as far as you're concerned, Felix, what is gratifying for you is that the Woyome connected matters, the Woyome case itself, the Waterville matter, and the Isofoton matters, the sole commissioner is clear that the Supreme Court has made this, ruling on them. Go get the money, period.
You see, regardless of the history, which we all know, we have. I mean, the Woyome matter dominated discussions for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
In this country. So there's no fact that is not known to all those who have been interested in the matter. So government has no option than to agree with the position taken by the sole commissioner. In any event, there are some of the actions that have been taken that were commenced by government. And indeed, there are processes underway to ensure that that is enforced.
Such as?
Okay.
Oh, but there was a criminal case against Mr. Woyome. It was dismissed. You can disagree with the judgment, but there was an effort to seek, if you like, justice in that particular matter. But let me make my submission. Let me make my submission.
Just hold on.
I beg you, let me make my submission.
Just hold on briefly for me. Let's hold on briefly. I almost forgot that. I was enjoying it so much. Forgot that we are still, today is a special day. The NDC is having its presidential and parliamentary primaries, and some matters are coming up. We are told, for example, that Senator Rawlings and Sam George both can't find their names on the register. and a lot is going on there. We are told about some very terrible things that are going on in Boku, is it Boku Central, where Mahama Yarga is supposed to be contesting? Is that the case, really? And a lot of difficult things are happening. The people are being chased with guns. I have on the phone right away the regional chairman of the NDC, Ade Koka, for Greater Accra. He's going to speak to us about whether or not they are holding the Ningo Pram Pram elections or it's been cancelled. Mr. Ade Koka, good morning. Thank you for joining us on Newsfile.
Good morning. How are you, my brother?
I'm good, sir. A beautiful thing the NDC had decided to do, but the challenges appear to be coming too quick in the day.
Well, let me say good morning to your viewers or listeners. Yeah, you know, anything that is new, you're bound to have some challenges, and we are facing some sort of challenges, and that has got to do with the register, which was released late last night, which in some places the wrong registered were sent there. For instance, instead of sending Ada registered to Ada, it was sent to Anya Souchu. So quickly have to ensure that they get, because the region did not do the distribution. That was done by National to the Electoral Commissioner.
But how could this happen? Because you were supposed to have these elections on the 7th, and you postponed because you needed to correct some of these anomalies.
Exactly.
And how many days on, you still are dealing with these difficulties that contenders, major contenders, cannot find their names in the register?
No, it is not true. Sam George, he claims that his name is not in the register.
Not only his name, but in excess of about 2,000, almost 3,000 persons cannot be found.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll explain something to you.
Okay, do so.
Good. Now, let's talk about Greater Accra, where one aspirant claims that his name is not in the register. That is why the Ningo Pram Pram election has to be put on hold for tomorrow.
It's been cancelled.
Now,
okay.
It's been put on hold for tomorrow.
All
now,
right.
Sam George, I've got the register in front of me, and his branch is called Health Post Ahiam. Health Post Ahiam. And on the register is number 217. For want of clarity, I want to spell the name that is there. It starts with George, and George is spelled George. Then there's Samuel, Samuel, and there's Nati, Nartu, George Samuel Nati. His membership ID, 215-172-533C. And his voter ID number is 127-301-7341. And his branch code, or where he
are you using the biometric register?
The register that the NDC is using for the election.
Say that again.
The register that the NDC is using for its election.
It's not supposed to be biometric.
You see, when you say biometric, it means that the fingerprints and all those things have been captured.
Okay.
So there are two things. When you say biometric, it means that your biodata has been captured.
Right.
Yeah. So we have explained this on many times.
Okay.
I am just telling you that Sam George's name is in the register. So if he's claiming that his name is on the register, it's blatant lie. That's what I'm trying to prove to you.
Interesting.
And you can send your
Interesting.
TV cameras here.
His supporters almost, caused some problem at the place because at the time they couldn't find the name.
The name is here. That's what I'm saying, that this is infantile.
And you are saying that the register you are looking at is the same register he looked and didn't find his name.
That is the register I'm talking about. The soft copy, we go to the headquarters. So I don't know what register.
What can you tell us? What can you tell us about Senator Rawlings's place situation too?
It has not been brought to my attention. So now that you've told me, I'm going to find out why her name is not in the register. There must be many reasons that her name might not be. One reason is that you must be a registered member your name must be on the National Voters Register. If your name is not on the National Voters Register, when they pick up, you will not appear because you are not duly registered in the country.
I see.
Good. So if you are not registered in Ghana as a voter, when they are picking the records register, you will not appear. So I don't want us to go there. So people should keep quiet and let sleeping dogs lie, rather than wanting to bring everything to the fore to embarrass.
What do you know? What do you know about this report that is coming from Boku Central? That the contender, is it Musa Abdullahi or so, has been chased with his brothers in a car, and I've actually been giving the car registration number GM 958713 with guns. His brother has been arrested.
Well, since morning I've been in the regional office.
Okay.
Dealing with Greater Accra matters.
All right.
What you just said to me is news to me.
Okay.
We are not privileged to having television. Or we are concentrating on what is happening in Greater Accra. So,
interesting. But you are satisfied so far with how things are going on?
Oh yeah, we are. That's why this morning we are solving the problems where they are having challenges. When they bring it to our attention, we resolve it. That's why I said that with Sam George, he has rather beat him more than he can chew. I
see. Thank you very much, Adekoka, regional chairman of the NDC here in Accra.
That's not fair to just Sam George. I don't want to defend Sam George, but really, the chairman of the says he's beating Moikan. While the elections are ongoing, really, I mean, Felix, how?
So basically, it's a new process. So. As for allegations,
while elections are going on, you're chairman of your region.
It's
an announcement on radio that you are gone.
It's too early.
Technical knockout.
It's too early to pass. But I think we should come back to this.
Well, it does appear that even the constituency level, the leaders there are using similar language about Sam George.
People have taken sides and all that.
Well, okay. So,
but it's early days here. So let us.
But they're supposed to be neutral.
Right.
Well.
Okay.
I agree in principle with that.
Let's see how quickly.
Yes. What I was going to say now is, regardless of what happened in the facts as they pertain to the drillship matter cannot be contested. And certainly those who have attempted to defend Anado have not done a good job of showing us why he cannot be held liable. I posed about 3 questions, none of which have been answered. I am saying, did Nanado as Attorney General cause the discontinuation of the services of Bandman and Partners or not? Following that, was there legal representation for GMPC in that case? At some point, was there default judgment? At the time that the default judgment was given, was there a negotiation taking place as to whether or not government was willing to pay Societe Generale $14 million as settlement? Again, how do you tell me that it is ever defensible not to show up in court to defend yourself, or at the very least draw the attention of the court?
Those points you have canvassed.
Yes,
but in respect of the way we matter,
for
example, Ace is asking the question, doesn't it come to you as a very curious point that all we can say about the Attorney General's role is one of inadvertence, is one of lack of knowledge, and we ended there, that she was ignorant, and we ended there. Though we are able to continue to say she did not do due diligence, we ended there, and the rest of the blame we heap on the court.
You see, Samson, I've told you already that as for the Warrior matter, the facts are clear. Government has conceded long ago.
Not the facts we are talking about.
What facts?
You stop asking
but
the
I'm saying that you can't ask that person because of your position on Nanado. You are not willing to accept Nanado's culpability, yet you want to go after Betty and Martin Odru.
Is that what is happening?
No, that's not what is happening. I'm saying that, listen, me personally, I have been on record to have spoken on this Warrior matter in a manner that was critical of Madam Betty.
Government.
Nobody can dispute
government
that. Secondly,
I think initially you defended.
No, of course, I said.
No.
You see, what happened?
You and the people who are
what happened was
you all defended him.
No, as and when
and said he was being kind to us.
No.
I mean, you specifically said that.
As and when more facts became available.
Oh, so you didn't have the facts at the time you spoke.
Of course, but as you speak to the fact that you.
But you are very very emphatic at the time. So now I wonder whether you are being fair to us. Because you probably don't have all the facts.
But they don't have. Even the commissioner didn't have.
There's no additional facts that have been brought in the way matter.
Let's hear him out.
The point I'm making is that persons who have taken a position that, as for some people, they cannot be charged, even when there is glaring incompetence on their part, cannot come and question who you are. I'm saying that why in this drillship matter, there's no way anybody can defend our decision not to go and contest the case. Why? At most, even if we did not challenge Societe Generale's offer of $40 million, we would have paid $40 million. We knew at all times that once they got judgment in that case, we were going to pay higher because they were in a much stronger position. And it came to pass. So let people...
There are questions being raised about...
whether or not another...
We had moved on from Societe Generale to go to Waterville because I wanted us to clear that and then move on to another issue. Questions being raised about persons who were not invited and yet very damning, comments were made about them.
That actually undermines the whole attempt to make a victim out of Nanado alone. Because many people didn't show up. I'm sure
the integrity of the findings.
There's no lack of integrity. Picture. You created the impression that Nanado had been singled out for victimization.
You still see it. You still see it.
You don't see it. I'm saying that you are speaking from both sides of your mouth. You are failing to accept that the same brush was used to paint.
But that undermines the integrity of the process.
Undermines the integrity of the process. What it means is that they were clear, they were seized with the facts, they knew. In any event, if you are finding facts, and you know the facts,
incredible.
Why waste your time? Why?
Really?
Ace raises the issue.
They knew.
Ace raises the issue that the commissioner.
So
when he's able to when he makes certain categorical verdicts on the individuals that he did not invite, then the presumption is that he had at his disposal all the documents that he was supposed, all the facts that he was supposed to have.
Until you are able to show that he didn't have them, you can't make such a conclusion.
No, let me bring to your attention. If you go back and look for the graphic of August 8th of this year, I wrote an article, a very tall one, on the Woyomi matter. And I stated that it was not conjecture, it was not speculation. I had written to the court to look for certain facts, and they were confirmed to me. That, for example, the commissioner did not go to the court for the primary documents concerning the Woyomi matter. He did not take the processes that were filed in court. I also did a search that revealed that the requirement for a certificate to be raised before the judgment debt will be paid had not been done, and so tax and everything was evaded.
Yes, but ultimately we are forgetting that the Woyomi matter, even before the Judgment Debt Commission was set up, was a subject of legal contestation, at least on two fronts. There was a Supreme Court case, which Mr. Amidu was successful in, and then there was a criminal case, which was adjudicated upon some.
And then there was a case that the state filed in the court and then compromised.
You can't forget that. You can criticize the posture of the performance.
The problem I have with some of this is that.
But the point I'm making,
and I'm glad I'm on this side, and the politicians are on that side.
Things were done in a manner.
You politicians have a very interesting way of dealing with this. Sometimes
because a charge of deliberate victimization has been made against government, it is important that I stress that those making that argument are in one breath upholding things that have been done to persons like Woyomi, Betty, and dismissing the findings made.
But I will agree with you on that.
They will not be vindicated. You are simply using that to extricate.
Before that, you positions on that side. But I agree with you on one point. If people are not prepared to admit that somebody that X happened, maybe Y also didn't happen. At the basis of conjecture, we can do that. But Felix, this is the problem.
Sure.
I'm sorry I get personal. You, at some point, came up very strongly to defend Woyomi. Are you now saying that your ability now to point a finger at Nanado is because you have now accepted that Woyomi was wrong, which means that you were wrong at first. And
so I have publicly stated so it is not a problem.
And so once Mr. Kwating and Mr. Bakum agree that they are prepared to consider the global picture, then they can talk about another matter. You see, it doesn't add up. But having said that, no, but I don't know proof of you recanting what you're saying. And this was when you were
where I have publicly criticized Madam Betty Modi's
performance. But have you criticized yourself for your initial bombastic defense of
it wasn't even a bombastic
but I want to make another point.
No.
You missed out on a case, a very critical case. That when the government went to try and set aside the so-called terms of settlement, which in my mind it was invalid in law, because once the court gave the default judgment, it was functus. So the terms of settlement were useless. They had no basis. Now they went ahead to set aside a useless terms of settlement. They lost. They filed a fresh action. It's interesting that they filed it in a commercial court. Now listen to me. You filed an action to say, I made a mistake in conceding that I owed him. Then you filed, and that's the basis of your case. You filed that case in the commercial court. Wait a second. You filed an action in the commercial court as plaintiff because you know that there's a mandatory 30-day period of mediation, where you will sit with the person to see if you can resolve the dispute. But here, what mediation was going to be possible? You have gone to you have sat down in one court, you've been hit for 6 in that court, you go to another court to set aside your so-called terms of judgment, and you go to a court that has a mandatory mediation period. Then, when the mediation period comes, it is during the mediation period that they agreed to pay him all the 3 installments that Justice Tanko had stayed. The one he said he should pay, and the 2. And when they had agreed and paid him in the mediation, now when you pay in mediation, those terms must be entered as a judgment of the court. You come back to the court. You don't tell the judge, the mediating judge, that you have paid the money. Then you come back to the court and set out the following spurious issues for trial. Whether or not the procurement process for the award of the contract to rehabilitate the stadia was completed by government, whether or not the government denied liability, whether or not the defendant procured the terms of settlement by mistake, whether the plaintiff is entitled to his claim, whether the defendant is entitled to his counterclaim. You have paid the money. A judge said, pay 1/3, don't pay the 2/3. You go to a court with a mandatory mediation procedure. Go and sit down. Pay the money. You come back and lie to the court that you have been unable to settle. You say that the settlement has broken down when you have paid. So you lie to the court for them to go on a useless frolic.
Okay.
And then come back and tell us that the question is that were these matters made available to Justice Appeal?
Okay, hold on. Let me hear you briefly on that aspect, because you had wanted to speak to Woyome matter. Briefly on that one. Let's move on to other issues.
In about 2 minutes.
Yes.
The first point, Felix and in fact the report goes on about Nanado withdrawing legal representation in the drillship case.
These are facts.
These are facts. It is not.
These are facts. If you can let me. It was government of Ghana that withdrew legal representation.
Where's evidence of that?
The president will not write a letter to say I'm wrong.
I'm saying yes, but first point, the report does not tell us the government's reason for doing that. The report did not take interest in that too. It is wrong that because you want to target a particular man, you would narrow down a decision by a government to that man. And I think this whole point about Nanado, a proper and a fairer point would be government withdrew representation. Government is not obliged to take Attorney General's advice when that advice comes.
The advice.
The commissioner should have found out. That is what the commissioner's work should have been. But that's okay.
What stops you from putting out the advice? Show me the advice.
I hate to disagree with Kuku, but actually these are questions we should ask the commissioner.
Now, quickly. No.
Show me the advice.
But the commissioner
question of Woyome. Please look at page 4. Page 4, the 6th item that the commissioner established. The payment Alfred Agbesi Woyome was inordinate and at the same time fraudulent. The commissioner says it was fraudulent. Somebody made a fraudulent payment. Mr. Woyome did not pay himself, and yet look at the recommendation. The commission recommends that in line with the review decision of the Supreme Court, the state must take all necessary steps to recall the money paid to Woyome from him with interest. And then the government of Ghana accepts the recommendation of the commission. When a fraudulent payment is made, the remedy is that Supreme Court withdraw the money. Is that a remedy?
Was there not a court
what remedy are you looking for?
Was there not a court case?
The people who made
a criminal case?
Yes, who made
Was
those
that not a criminal case that was dismissed?
I'm not saying that the person who was paid the criminal money, the fraudulent payment, those who made those fraudulent payments,
those who facilitated it.
Did the trial judge not specifically speak to the role of those people?
What did the report say?
No, on that, please. We did not charge anybody. Listen, if you have read Justice Nassam's judgment, substantial parts of which I disagree with, but if you have read his judgment, he kept asking, this man couldn't have done this on his own.
Right.
Where are the people? In that case as well, please, the arguments filed by the state said that the Deputy Attorney General was ignorant. And the judge rejected it. So this ignorance that Justice Apo is talking about, there's a dangerous observation on page. What Justice Apo is talking about is the ignorance. Justice Ajay Nassam has rejected in a matter that is on appeal. And this is what's interesting. Then Justice Apo says that the money should be recalled from Mr. Weme with interest. Hold on a sec. The government did not file that action to recall the money from Mr. Weme. It was Mr. Martinamidu who did.
Sure.
When the Supreme Court
gave... presently, the government is in court.
Let me finish.
Listen to what
I'm not done. Listen. When the government... So the government was actually a defendant in the case and became a defendant judgment creditor.
Sure.
Listen, we didn't ask for interest. We did not. And so Mr. Amidu himself went back to the Supreme Court to ask them to review it and give us judgment. They said we can't review twice. So when the Judgment Debt Commission says it should be recovered with interest, interest from where?
Okay, thank you.
He has taken 51 million of our money.
Thank you. The last observation, read that.
30 seconds. Yeah. Look, in the case of Isofoten, the commission says something, government says something very important. It's about retrieve the monies.
Right.
Listen to government's response. Government, however, notes that international tribunals have not agreed entirely with our Supreme Court decision in Balkan.
Wait.
On this I cannot.
Blah, 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 blah. And then goes on to say, on the customary international law principles of estoppel, the government of Ghana was precluded from arguing that the Bank Agreement was unenforceable under Article, some say what does it mean? What? As far as Ace is here, he can help me.
No, I won't.
What really government is saying is that those monies that the court ordered that we should retrieve from those who collected it by reason of the fact that
there was no prior approval by Parliament.
Government's position here said that I'm unable to take those money.
And government reminds us that there is an arbitration going on.
Throw the towel in.
Okay. It is extremely unfair for Kweku to distort this part of the ruling this part of the white paper that way. That is not what government is saying. Why? The Supreme Court has ruled that because of the violation of Article 1815, which in any event was violated by the MPP.
Yeah. Collect the money. Government says yes, we have taken the
money. Should I give you a list of 1815 that you have violated?
We're very limited time to deal with.
The people have taken you to international arbitration.
Exactly.
There was no
arbitration.
Yeah.
If they get an award,
so I don't see the violation.
They can enforce the award.
That's right.
So in respecting the decision of the Supreme Court, you ought to be mindful.
Yeah.
Of the outcome of
arbitration. So government is drawing our attention to that fact. That's when it comes to Article 1815. Where our Supreme Court has always consistently appears to say because you didn't get approval, this contract is null and void.
Exactly.
When we go to the international arbitration, they tell us a different story.
And government has decided that
government says be mindful. Be mindful. You say we should go for the money.
What does be mindful mean?
Now, Kweku, I want us to see how we're able to deal with this quickly. And I'm referring to the Delta Foods case, in which also government says that. No, but I wanted quickly to say the IOCO aspect that they should continue with this project. What do you say?
With the drillship.
Yes.
You see, the Contrana, that part about Contrana, Contran General.
Yeah.
They handle public funds, pay disbursement and those things.
Yeah, the commissioner says they should do it. Yes. Government says IOCO should take that job and do it.
Yes. Really, the record should be available.
Right.
And the KT Hammond, the mandates, those documents were all given. They were all given to the commission.
Okay.
Okay. The power of attorney and all those things. The $900,000 that the credit, the future debts, nothing of that sort ever existed. I have the full list here, which was written and given by the GMPC.
Right.
All their creditors. okay, and those monies were effected, payments were effected. I'm not sure whether any of the creditors have come out asking GMPC since 2001 that they haven't been paid. The list is here. The list was given to the commission.
Okay.
So some of these things, you ask yourself, you wonder, it's mind-boggling why the commission went
the commission
to
had
things.
issues with the Delta Foods
I'm
thing,
coming. But
which,
yes, but let me clarify two things. Look, the Woyome matter, there was nothing like a contract so as to violate Article 1815. There was no.
The Supreme Court said that to the extent that his contract was predicated on Waterville,
yes,
and Waterville had been shut down under 1815, he could not have had a contract.
So
what other
I'm coming.
Any court
so that
to
is
declare
out.
the payment illegal.
So we have demolished.
When the Supreme Court has spoken, that's the end of that matter. But the unfortunate part is that it wasn't our government that went to court
that it was
to the
illegal.
Supreme Court. It was Martin Amin. When our government went to court, they compromised the matter and paid the money to him. Felix, as a Ghanaian, you should feel violated by this.
Of course, we are all upset by it.
That when our government went to court to recover the money, they compromised. Oh, the government. They compromised the government.
Sorry.
And lied to the court.
That is only your view.
No, please read this. Read this. No, wait, Felix. When the government went before Justice, the government went before Justice Novisi Ayene and said that the matter having come before settlement and the settlement having broken down. Hold on. The judge was told that the settlement had broken down. Yet, before the judge was told the settlement had broken down, we have paid the money to Mr. Oyome. Now, is this not a lie? No, please read this.
I've asked a fundamental question.
Yes, sir.
Of all the legal wranglings that have gone on,
yes, sir,
what has been the substantial basis for the Supreme Court's order for the money to be retrieved from Oyome? 1815. Absolutely.
No, but not whether or not we made a contract. No, so you can't even go there.
Absolutely.
Yes. Because what you were standing on.
Yes. Have been shut down under 1815.
But that is a basis upon
which gentlemen. Unfortunately,
no, that's not based on which you
I've not even been able to read one single text message. Let me read this one from Larry. Larry says he wants to know. He wants to know whether the settlement papers, as far as the Societe Generale matter was concerned, whether the settlement papers were filed before the UK court, indicative of an agreed settlement between the Societe Generale and GMPC. He wants to know whether the settlement was filed. No. Because if you get your judgment and you want to deal with it later on in a different way, that's not the matter of the court. So it wasn't necessary.
Having demolished this Woyome contract matter, the Waterville thing too, we ought to look at it critically. Look, the Waterville contract really, indeed, never became effective. The contract that was signed in 2006 because never became. Yes, and if you recall, the conditions precedent yes, were not fulfilled. So Jogate wrote a letter to Waterville to that effect. But the work that they had done was paid for. Post Kufuor, Waterville goes with a so-called contract that they thought was valid, convinced government that was valid, and
we are out of time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And
this is completely unfair.
It is such that when you broach these subjects, particularly the Woyome subjects, you never get to the end of it.
A lot of time.
Yes.
But such a subject, it could have taken even 3 hours.
This particular part has been such that you can't even structure it. Anyway, what we'll do is that at the next discussion, we'll look at the recommendations that were made and see how the nation is going to benefit from it, how judges should pay attention to the size of the public purse, and also how they should monitor the CJ should play a part in all of this. I'm sorry, but this is where we draw the curtains. My guests have been Ace and Koma, Kweku Bako, Felix Kwachi Ofosu, and also Kweku Kwating. I'm Samson Ayanini. Have a good afternoon.